Yeah, thank you. Look for Real is it's a company that is quite new. I think we are around about 1.5 years on the market, but the members of the company are old rabbits, as we say in Germany. A long time, I think 20 years in real estate, especially in logistics. So what we are doing today is we are developing real estate for logistics, but mainly for light industrial. Light industrial is a little bit difficult to explain because the understanding across Europe is different. But let's say it in this way: it's valuable. When we are speaking about logistics, real estate, we are more speaking about 3PL. So I'm a 3PLer for myself in my history, but we need a dry warehouse with a dry roof. And when we want to bring innovation inside, when we want to develop something, when we want to do something valuable, we have to speak with clients who understands that, who needs that, and that's a way of innovation. So, as example, when you are going with a warehouse for us today, we first, when we start, make a simulation for the energy, for the processes, and then we build the warehouse probably in a BIM file, and at the end we also control the quality by putting in sensoring, monitoring systems. We have in each warehouse an energy management system that is pre-certified by the ISO 50001. So that is a kind of digital real estate that serves data to the client and brings the value add.
Okay, great. Damian?
I mean, I would say we look at technology in terms of slightly broader, how it impacts consumer behavior and how that impacts our clients, the use of real estate and the needs of real estate, as much as the more direct PropTech itself and how we're changing the way we manage buildings, optimize the use of it for our clients. Yeah. So it's twofold for us, but...
Okay, great. Marc?
So Dentons is the largest global law firm. I'm sort of the odd one out. So I'm not a real estate lawyer, I'm an IT lawyer, but I do advise a lot of clients in the real estate and particularly the retail sector on their legal challenges in terms of using customer data, for example.
Okay, good, and that's interesting because that picks up something that we also sort of looked at earlier with Steve Lewis actually in his presentation. Menno.
Menno Lammers, initiator of PropTechNL, and together with Marieke, we're growing and building PropTechNL. It's a crossover network, and our mission is to reinvent the future of real estate.
One of the things I wanted to pick up, maybe just starting with you, Rüdiger, in terms of the, we've all seen in our day-to-day lives both disruptors, which may have been advantageous to in terms of booking holidays, or but also just technology taking an ever-growing part of that. Do you see that kind of continuing even further also into our working lives, just on a general kind of measure?
Well, I think it's a growing process that we do not really recognize, but it comes up day by day. We have new technologies. Sometimes I have the feeling we get every day new solutions, and we have to look for the problems. So when you looked, as an example, to Amazon, I'm an administrator on our system. You get new products every day, and you don't know what to use for. So it's a slightly growing process, but definitely it will come. But I hope that we will recognize that.
And Damian, where do you think we are kind of now in the process from your point of view? From the brokerage side, obviously, there are potential disruptors coming in, but you've also got growth in other areas potentially. Where do you think we are at the moment in the industry in terms of understanding PropTech and the innovation side of it? You know, where are we in the journey with that, do you think? Do you think everybody understands it and is taking it on board?
I mean, I think it depends which sector you're in, whether you're in the logistics or retail sector, or just generally offices or hospitality, so there's differences there. And even within our own clients, say on the office occupier side, you see real differences in terms of their almost feelings sometimes, or their thoughts in terms of how much tech they're adopting in their kind of operations, their daily lives, how that's changing their staffing, their recruitment, their talent, and there's real differences by sector. So some of the more traditional sectors, pharma, industrial production, slightly old school sectors, feel like they're barely touching it. You talk to some of the tech firms and they're really, really pushing it, and pushing it in their buildings. Their CEOs have different visions. They look at soft as well as hard factors So their adoption of the technology is very, very different in terms of how they're trying to optimize productivity, create a community, create a place to work compared to some of the older sectors. So you get massive differences within a sector and across sectors.
Okay, good. And Menno, Jeroen mentioned you're the expert in this, and I'm certainly very much not. So where do you think, when you're looking at, obviously this is a study on the real estate sector and PropTech, where do you think the industry is at the moment in terms of understanding where that can potentially lead us and maybe the advantages of it?
We're just at the beginning. Of course, you see the PropTech companies. They bring solutions, different solutions. No, but of course they do their market research to bring the solutions. And on the other hand, you have the companies who are already there and they have to find their ways, but they have also their regular business, the 70%. So they are looking for how can we integrate something, or how can we reinvent ourselves. But at this moment, the business is going well, earning a lot of money. So they probably don't have time or don't want to make time, but they have to make time because time will change.
And how are things like, blockchain, these kinds of concepts, how are they going to influence the market, and how are they going to make a difference for the other guys on the panel?
They will influence. Blockchain, of course, it's the data, it gets transparency. At the other hand, you see, of course, the artificial intelligence. That will also have impact, because they said when I was in London, they said, okay, our data will be real time, but our objects will be managed by artificial intelligence. So it will change our behavior as a real estate professional, but also how we work or how we live and how we work together. So it will affect them.
Okay, and Marc, one of the things actually that I picked up in the States was that there was actually less take-up in terms of people moving towards wanting to go to be lawyers, because they felt that artificial intelligence would replace a large number of the sort of crunching jobs within the legal fraternity. What's your sense of that? Do you think the law, the role of a lawyer will change because some of those things will be dealt with by artificial intelligence?
Well, similar as there's PropTech, there's also legal tech, and you do see that sort of more standardized work is not yet taken over by technology, but technology is helping and is making it more efficient. So yeah, I do think there'll be a change, but so far I haven't seen any lawyers being taken over by technology.
Okay, fine. And Jeroen, obviously Bouwinvest investing across sectors, across countries, but also very strong in terms of its view on cities. How do you see these kinds of innovations, whether it's the Internet of Things, whether it's data, whether it's other PropTech disruptors coming in? How do you see that impacting on kind of investment, but also that sort of development, investment in cities?
Okay, good, very good question. Actually, yesterday, Marleen Bosma gave here a presentation about urbanization and cities getting bigger and bigger, and the need for investors to focus on, the need for investors like us to invest in cities which have a long-term future and create for a long-term livable cities. And I think the even PropTech, or especially PropTech, is also able to accommodate these kind of things. We are now talking. I gave some examples about Internet of Things, but there's still the examples I gave are still Internet of Things examples within buildings. But there is the next step, and that might be an interesting debate about privacy also. There's going to be the next step, and that's going to be smart cities or smart areas maybe first. I would be very interested if not only the OVG building had sensors, but the whole South Axis had sensors. And so, this parking place could be used between the whole train system, and the metro system can be connected to it. So all things to make areas better, to make areas perform better. That's kind of a long answer, I understand now. We are investing, we are a core investor, so we are investing in areas which have these kind of long-term quality to them. And I think PropTech is going to help, and I think the Internet of Things is one of the leading things in this respect.
And for Rüdiger, in terms of your, obviously, looking also at the investment side, Log4Real aiming to grow considerably over the next few years. How do you see yourselves then using that kind of technology? Are you going to be mainly using that in terms of your ability to be able to asset manage more efficiently? Or will you also be using it in terms of your investment strategy?
Well, the thing is, the investment that we have is in technology that is already on the market. So what we have seen when you mentioned location is not that important. Location is important because we need a big pipe in the floor. Otherwise, we cannot do PropTech. We have to combine all the existing things and to manage this, and this is the key. So when we are going in an area, when we are going in a warehouse, when we are going to build up a new real estate, we have to develop a managing concept with much as PropTech as we can, because we have to collect the data and make these data available for the quality of the people who are living there, who are working there. And this is the key. To develop the management is also the key to make this real estate valuable over years.
Okay, good. I wanted to pick up with you, Marc, that what Jeroen had just mentioned about, and it came up earlier very definitely when we were looking at smart cities, just in terms of what Steve Lewis was saying about the sort of sensors that you could have there, which would actually then just be able to tell you how frustrated people were, or how angry they were, how relaxed they were, but also what their shape and size was, how fast they were walking, whether that had changed over a period of days or months, whether they were moving in a different way. Now, I can see that that's useful for some things. I can see that there's also a terrible danger of shops telling me not to go in and buy something. You don't need that croissant, is what they're going to be saying to me. But how much of an issue does that create in terms of invasion of privacy, those kinds of things? Although those aspects are there, how much of that is actually practically going to be able to be used?
Well, what I see in practice currently going on is that it's difficult for companies to actually not use customer data, but for example the Wi-Fi tracking you mentioned, that is from a legal point of view very, very complicated to currently do within the boundaries of the law. One example is that you cannot, so with Wi-Fi tracking you catch the MAC address of, for example, your iPhone. You cannot collect the MAC address of people living in apartments above a store. But from a technical perspective, it's not possible to block those out. So that is something where technology is ahead, where the law is lagging behind, but where technology hasn't found the solution yet to be compliant.
And Menno, one thing I wanted to pick up with you as well, obviously we're here in Europe. How much of this kind of technology and innovation is coming from Europe, and how much of it is coming from the US or Asia? Are we learning from them, or is it now that Europe is beginning to drive a lot of these changes?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because when I first met PropTech, I met it in the UK. In the US they call it real estate technology. There are ecosystems in the US. MetaProp New York is a big accelerator, influence one. I went to London and we met a lot of PropTech professionals, about 40 countries, and everybody is finding things out, looking for, and next week I have a Skype call with PropTech Asia to tell them what's going on here in Holland, and we will exchange. So there is something going on. I think the countries who are most active, or what I have seen for now, is Scandinavia, UK, Germany, Asia on some way, and of course the US. But everybody, when I spoke to the people from out of Holland, they are looking to Holland. And when I asked them, can you tell me what's the smartest building in your country or in your city? And they were thinking, and they say, yeah, but you have the Edge in Amsterdam. That's great. So the PR marketing from the Edge is great. But I have heard, and I can't tell you the details, but there will be a next Edge at some months, I think before the end of the year. So we're looking forward.
So we look forward to seeing what that does. I want to bring this a little more. I'm going to come back to some of these topics in a minute, but I just wanted to bring that down, Damian, into some of the concrete things that this may mean for the industry. Because obviously, if you've got startups, you've got disruptors, you've got tech, that's got to be driven and housed somewhere as well. So what does that mean in terms of science parks, in terms of startup areas in cities, those kinds of things that may be viewed as a disruptor, but actually can also be seen as a tenant or a different occupier of real estate space?
I think in future there need to be part and parcel of every city's economy. There has to be a facilitation of startups, of scale-ups, because these are the businesses that are going to be driving the future of our city economy. So if you're not facilitating that, you are not going to grow as a city, you're not going to attract people to your city, you're not going to retain the right talent. So it's critical to help these guys, and that's the job of the city, the national government, to do that.
And from your point of view, Jeroen, how from an investment side, how are you looking at those types of real estate that are associated with this kind of this kind of PropTech, this innovation side? Do you see that as making a city more investable? I mean, Berlin is an example.
Generally speaking, yes. These kind of cities which are innovative, they attract the young people, they attract the talented people, and then when they attract talented people, they will also attract even more employers who are focusing on the talented people, because more and more, like the famous book of Richard Florida says that it's not anymore people following jobs, but it's the jobs following the people. So it's this kind of ongoing trend in these kind of cities to get better people, to get better, more innovative jobs, and to get even better people, and so on. That's one part of the answer. The second one, and then referring to these kind of science park type of developments. I think I'm kind of a fan of these kind of developments, because they bring together the government, they bring together education, they bring together companies, and if you do that in the right mix, then you are really aiming for nice startup hubs. But also, if you are past your startup phase, you can still stay there and maybe be an educator yourself and participate in new startups. So I think from a city point of view, that's interesting, and I think also from an investor point of view, that would be very interesting to do.
Okay, good. And Marc, I mean, we've seen in London especially, but it's true also in a number of other cities, that where Google lands, they build an office, it suddenly becomes an attractive area. Is that something that you're seeing in terms of your real estate clients, that these kinds of tech areas are beginning to be much more interesting?
Well, I think in general that, I mean, as I said, I'm an IT lawyer, so I don't do real estate transactions, for example. But what I do see is an increased interest in technology, and real estate companies, real estate investors teaming up with IT startups, with tech startups to work together and enhance their business model. That's something I do see quite a lot.
Okay, good. And Rüdiger, in terms of the, obviously a lot of yours maybe comes from occupier demand in terms of trying to reduce bills, make it more sustainable, but they'll be also fitting out a number of the logistics assets. What's your kind of view on that? Are you kind of leading occupier demand in terms of innovation, or are you really responding to the demands of your occupiers, of the e-commerce companies, of the logistics occupiers?
Well, it depends on the location where you are. So when you are speaking about Berlin is a good example. We are just developing 160,000 square meters there in 4 steps. There is a big step with 70,000 square meters, but it's definitely not for the Berlin market. It's something that you have to bring from outside. But the rest that we are doing, you can build it up to 2,500 square meters, and you can have it in one finger, as we call it. So the 30,000 square meters, something for these companies that must grow out of Berlin. So it's not in the center of Berlin; it's the outside. So they must be able to breathe. It's an old management rule: if you cannot grow anymore, you will die. And that is the killing field that you find in a lot of companies. So what we have to do is we have to provide that service that the company needs. And in Berlin, as example, we decided to provide also the IT technology inside, so that they have a base where they can work. We have also IT partners there who are providing Wi-Fi and these things. That works, but it's really a question of the location where you go at. You cannot do that everywhere. You need the atmosphere.
Okay, good. And Menno, I mean, Jeroen put a list of different topics that hadn't necessarily been addressed in the research that you'd done. And I just sort of wondered how kind of influential you see these. What do you see as the most influential if we look at, the sharing economy, remote working, work life? You've got consolidation of data, artificial intelligence. You've got driverless cars. You've got all kinds of blockchain. What are the most influential ones, and just particularly in terms of the real estate sector, not necessarily lives, but the real estate sector?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because for me, I'm looking forward for the whole artificial intelligence and machine learning development. I'm really looking forward because I hear the presentation from Google, and they use machine learning just for the advertising. And Purple Bricks, it's a player in the UK, and they had a conversion about 27% normally, and when they used machine learning, it's about 70%. And of course, it's an ethical thing, but it's a big difference. So I'm looking forward. The biggest impact will be how I will behave, how I will use the things and making the connections. So that's more a person thing. So that's it for me. How we going to work together, how we make smart connections, new connections, because there is a lot of things. And what you see now is that there is a level we can connect things together, more technologies. You see also mixed reality. That's also a connection with 2 technologies. Google also connects 2 technologies. So that's interesting.
Okay, good. One of the things, just in terms of the legal aspect that I'd picked up before, which was that what they were saying when I was in the States then was that although there will be a move away from people having to remember things, so the ability to be able to remember things will be less important than your ability to be able to ask the correct question of the artificial intelligence. And one thing that artificial intelligence can't do is replace human interaction, because it can't necessarily convince you of the same thing. So barristers should be safe. But looking at some of the things you were talking about there, Jeroen, where you've got You mentioned Funda. There's also new startup. Ventu is another of those kinds of ones, which are changing the way people look at the market and the data in the market. Do you think, Damian, that brokerage services, in a way, will have to move to being much more about adding some value along the way? I'm not suggesting they don't at the moment, but do you think it'll have to move more that way in terms of value add, in terms of consultancy, in terms of, will it become a different focus?
Absolutely. I mean, it's our own business model. We're advisory now rather than brokerage. That's how we put ourselves out. And it's about helping a client through various stages of the process, whether it's investment transaction, talking about their buildings, how their building can be more sustainable, more efficient. I mean, a lot of the work we do on workplace planning has been with occupiers, but that's going to be more and more with developers and investors. So we have to take much more of an advisory approach, because pure brokerage itself is, certainly for smaller transactions, will get simpler to do. Whether blockchain has a real impact on that space remains to be seen. I think blockchain will really impact the logistics sector, possibly first and foremost, because if it can smooth up freight forwarding, container shipping from a larger scale and make that much more efficient, I think there's easy wins there. But for sure, it's going to impact our business.
Okay, good. In terms of the market, I'm just wondering, Jeroen, you've obviously got retail assets. How much are you seeing? How much are you using new technology in order to manage those assets, in order to monitor them, and make sure that you're getting the best return?
We use it more and more in the office sector. And we use it, of course, in the residential sector, which is the largest sector that we are investing in. So one of the things we are doing, for instance, in Strijp S, is we have 14 14 apartments on the top level of new developments, which are connected to solar power. And these apartments, they are on direct current, which is in Dutch gelijkstroom. And not alternating current, the wisselstroom. And that actually is kind of saving consumption. It's cheaper and it's actually better, because the solar power is also in direct current. So we are saving money there, we're saving energy. We are providing the 14 people living there with an app. So they can, it's kind of a gamification type of app, so they can reduce their energy levels. And then the most interesting thing happened was that, of course, some of those tenants were actually tech nerds, and they were asking us for the API because they wanted to build their own extension to the app. So we didn't envision that beforehand, but then it turned out it was kind of a development from kind of a top-down development, but now it's slowly changing to a kind of a co-creation development. And one of the things we added also, I mean, there's a lot of sensors also in these apartments, also sensors under the floor. And one of the tenants is asking to get access to these kind of things to connect it with his robot vacuum cleaner. So there are things that you think which are interesting for people, and they come up with whole different ideas about it. And that's also the way that we are looking at these kind of developments. We are creating opportunities, but that's it. I think that's the best thing you can do: create a lot of opportunities and then see which ones will blossom and which one in the end will not.
You wanted to pick that up, Rüdiger.
Yeah, I'd like to pick the question, because that's what we also spoke in it before this of this panel about these things. What we actually are doing when we speak about sensors and everything, mostly of us, we think about energy saving. So energy saving is something that we also know from our homes. So we have systems since 20 years with geothermal and so, but we have no information about that, what happens in the real estate. So in the office area, it's quite clear. But if you go in a logistics warehouse, okay, you can make a measurement of heating, of humidity. But what is for the client? What data can you provide for a client about that? What happens in the warehouse? So what we are doing is, example, we have a cooperation with the supplier of our doors. So we have doors that tell us how long the door is open. It's quite simple, but if you ask one of your clients going in a warehouse, how long is normally the time that you need to unload a truck? they are looking with great eyes to you. And even if the door is open, it does not say that the truck is inside of that. Yeah, perhaps the door is open, it's warm, it's a warm day like today, the people are standing outside having their cigarettes, and inside the cooling is bumping. Yeah, so these are the information that you can provide to a client if you think and develop concepts for the client to provide also an optimization process for his processes. Not think only in the real estate, think about the process of the client.
So, what do you think for you? What do you think the biggest changes will be? The most influential on the way you work or the way your company works? Let's start with you, Jeroen.
Okay, for me, that's access to data, and we are increasingly thinking about adding sensors to the buildings that we own, and collecting data to make the buildings to really get a grip on how people and tenants use the buildings, and not only the homes, also probably the retail at one point, but for sure the office sector. And gathering these kind of information will help us make better, hopefully, make better investments in the future. I mean, there's a whole trend of healthy living and healthy offices, but you have to measure. I mean, I think for the past 10 years, we kind of modeled a lot of things, and now we can actually measure them. So I think there is really, for me, that's the one big thing that we are going to focus on very much.
Okay, great. Rüdiger.
Well, my first intention was also to say access to data, but it's not only access to data, it is the know-how to have interpretations of these data. When we speak about real estate today, we are also speaking about big data in a warehouse. And it's not a warehouse for data, it's a warehouse for logistics operation. And we have to develop tools to find the right decision to manage this warehouse in a proper way.
Good. Damian.
I think it comes back to smart cities and better understanding smart cities and what different city governments are doing to develop smart cities. So it's a city that gets its sums right, sustainable urban mobility being one of it, electrified vehicles by 2030. The EU wants 50% of urban vehicles to be electrified, and that's going to change a lot about the way we function, the way we move, and the way real estate connects as a result of that. So we've got to better understand that and understand what city governments are doing around that, because some are certainly much further ahead of this than others.
Okay, good. Marc.
I mean, in the past hour we've been speaking about data only, and I see a lot of my clients also in the real estate sector who are moving from being just investors in real estate into becoming data companies and companies that are driven by data. So I think from the legal perspective, data security is pivotal in the next years. We've all seen WannaCry, we've seen what happened to BA at Heathrow over the past few days. I think a lack of data security can have a massive impact on your brand, but also on your operations. If you're not able to access your data, if your data is hacked, if your data is held ransom, you cannot continue your operations, and then that's going to cost a lot of money.
Okay, good. Interesting. Yes, the BA disaster certainly highlights that. Menno.
We say goodbye to the real estate industry, and there will be a PropTech industry.
We say goodbye to you.
And it's more holistic approach. It's not about the building, it's about areas. And it's more about well-being instead of bricks.